Hello to you friends, this is Dhamma on Air number 39, recorded on the 8th of October, the year 2016, on planet Earth, on Knuckles Mountain, Bambarella, Sri Lanka. We are out back under the tree because the weather is okay today. Little windy, but sunny and nice. There are 5 questions, 1 lotus offering, but first the normal intro. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honourable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. We take the lotus offering first, and it comes right here. Hello friends, this is the Lila Marigava, the Temple of the Tooth, where the Buddha's right canine tooth lies under this golden roof there. Some of my very kind and long time staunch supporters from a foreign country have just recently got their second child, and then asked me to make an offering so that this small girl named Ella and her sister Melody will become Buddhist when they grow up. And so of course I will do that. So we bought 5 lotuses. I have one for me, one for Ella, one for Paul, one for Ak, and one for Melody. And these we now gonna go up and offer to the Lord's Buddha's tooth. And if somebody wants to that I do similar, then I'll be happy to do it. Now the incense has been offered. Now we will go and offer the traditional water and go 3 times around the Bodhi tree, the tree the Buddha enlightened. This is not the tree from Bulgaria, but it's one of the 16 saplings that was taken for the tree, which is from the mother sapling, which is up at Anagatavamsa-desana. So this is a sapling from the real tree. And you will get some water and then go around it 3 times, keeping it to your right side. Then offer the water to the Buddha tree. This we will also do for Ella today, so she may become a good Buddhist when she grows up. Thank you. Such a lotus offering to the Lord Buddha's tooth, his right canine tooth, which is lying inside Kandy, 50 kilometers from here, in the central hill country in Sri Lanka, is worth doing in any Buddhist life before one dies. The second thing that is worth doing, recommended by the Buddha himself, was to take on a Buddhist pilgrimage to visit the 4 holy places at least. Namely Lumbini, Nepal, where he was born, Bodh Gaya, where he was enlightened in the middle of India, Isipatana, where he set rolling the wheel of the Dhamma by holding the first speech on the Four Noble Truths, and Kusinara, where he died. He said explicitly that if any Buddhist with a devout heart goes on such a pilgrimage, even though he dies on the pilgrimage, he will go to a good destination just from that itself. So such a pilgrimage is standard before one dies as a lay Buddhist. The first question, question number 123, goes like this. What did the Buddha say about the human and Deva relation? Yeah, he said many things, and there are many stories. There are books about it in the Buddhist Tipitaka, the 3 Pali texts. First of all, in the Samyutta Nikaya, the collected speech of the Buddha, there's a whole 2 sections on young Devas and older Devas and female divine beings who comes to the Buddha and speak to him and ask him various questions, usually in a poetic form. very eloquent. I will read up some of them here. The next thing one should realize is that devas are as different as humans. So it's kind of like asking me what about the human relations. So this is not a subject that you can exhaust in any speech, because it's so manifold. But in general, one can say, from a lay Buddhist point of view, if one is meeting devas, has divine contact, it is usually because of one's family members. It can be one's grandma or grandpa, or one's former spouse in some lives back, or one's former children some lives back, who has taken pity upon one, and seeing one being in some kind of problem, or just well-wishing for one, interferes with one's life, usually without being recognized as being a deva. So that's the usual one encounters. Sometimes the deva, especially to the nobles, and in particular to the Buddhas, they would make themselves known as devas, because they know that this will not cause any posture or any kind of like exaggeration or paparazzi like events. Among those, this spans a large spectrum of events, but one famous one is the Brahma, Mahabrahma, Sahampati, that when he recognizes or perceives with his mind that the Buddha is in doubt whether he should teach the Dhamma or not, because he asks himself, can human beings understand this Dhamma, or is it too subtle, is it too complex? And then he's on the verge of not preaching the Dhamma. And then this Brahma Sakmapati, there for his high position, he perceives that, and then he say, my world will perish, because everybody will fall down to a lower stage because of primitive behavior. So he enters in the front of the Buddha and folds his robe over one shoulder, just like I have, bow down and request the Buddha to set forth the Dhamma, preach the Dhamma, and thereby establish a sasana, and thereby lift the world up from primitive behavior by putting in forth as an ethics which is absolute, what we call sila, or good morality. And when Brahma Sahampati has done that, then he goes back to his realm. And then he's kind of like very satisfied with himself, because he knows he did something very crucial. And that it happens with all Buddhas actually, that a Brahma come and request them to do it. And then the Brahmas of course know that they have done something very crucial and very good to the world. And they have earned themselves a gigantic mountain of merit by requesting the Buddha to preach the Dhamma, and by him agreeing to it. Another event from a much lower deva, Sakka, by the Hindus called Indra, the king of the Tavahimsa heaven, and his wife, they were looking for merit. They were also looking for this good quantum mechanical probability for elevation in the future, because they know also their deva state will not last forever. They will fall down again. Then they need some merit to boost them up. And so they saw that Mahakasyapa, the father of the Sangha, he should go for Pindabat, and he always went among the poor. And he had this morning planned to go among the basket weavers street, in particular place in India. Basket weavers is usually a fairly poor class of people in India, still even today. So he went there, but then Sakka and his wife, they disguised themselves as basket weavers. And then he came to their house, and then they put their food in his bowl. And then when Mahakasyapa, he got this divine food, then he recognized Kasyapa, and he recognized Sakka as Sakka, and he called him Indra, because this is his Indian name. And then he said, Indra, don't do that again. And then Indra excused and say, but whenever Mahakasyapa, we also need merit. Even though we are devas, we also need merit. Yes, but don't do it again. And then he accepted the food and went away, Mahakasyapa, but he scolded, I'll not say scolded, but reprimanded the deva of kind of like fooling him with his disguise of being a poor people. Because he just said no to some other divine being, some devatas, female devas that make themselves
various scholars and asked to give him food. Then because he had this, was a forest monk, he only went among the poor people, he rejected their offer. But then he was fooled later down the road by Indra and his wife, looking for merit, and also gaining the merit, because he accepted the food. This is some examples. From the other end of the scale is it's a funny story from the Tipitaka. It was two forest monks who were sitting out and meditating in the forest, and then they died more or less within some months with each other. And then one of them was reborn at the divine level, and the other one was reborn as a worm of a dung beetle. It was reborn inside an egg of a piece of dung, cow excrement, where these dung beetles, they put their eggs so the larvae grow up, and then they eat the dung, and then they become these dung beetles afterwards. And then this forest monk, when he became into his divine existence, he said, where do I come from? And then he realized that he came there from this and that forest, and this and that Ariya, forest monastery, and he had this and that friend. And then he said to himself, where's my friend? Where has he been reborn? And then he saw he was reborn as a dung beetle larvae inside a pile of excrement. And so he, as quick as a man can stretch his arm, he went down there on planet Earth and looked into the hole, make himself very small, looked into the hole of this dung beetle. And then he said, friend, sorrow is big for you. You have been reborn as a dung beetle. Why don't you come with me? I can make you divine, then I can take you to the divine level. And then his friend said to him, fool, don't you see? I'm the richest person in the world. I love excrement. I eat excrement. And I live in a house of excrement. And then his friend there outside the Deva, he scratched his head and said, apparently my friend, he has become crazy because he thinks eating excrement and living in a house of excrement, that's the highest happiness. So I have to haul him out. And then he tried to grab his friend, the worm, and haul him out his cave inside this pile of excrement. But his friend, the worm, he stuck to his house. He didn't want to go out his house of excrement because he thought he was the richest person or being in the world, because he was living in a house of what he loved to eat, namely excrement. And so eventually the Deva realized that he could not get him with to the divine, and he let him go. And he let him go with a thought and say, as he clings to his excrement, so also I cling to my friendship with him. Both of us experience suffering. And so he vanished there right on the spot and left him right there. So it's an example of clinging. The Deva was clinging to his friendship with the dung beetle worm, and the dung beetle worm clinging to his house of excrement that he was eating. And we are clinging to this world here, and whatever world we live in, high or low, rich or poor, young or old, beautiful or ugly, we cling to whatever we are among or what we have. But it's all suffering. It's all suffering. It's first when we release it, let it go. The dung beetle could not let it go. But the Deva could let it go. He could let his friend go at least. Whether he could let the divine world go, I don't know. The story doesn't tell. So that's another way of telling about the interaction between Devas and other beings. Then there's one Deva here who come and ask. This is a typical formula of Devas coming and ask. They will come and then they at night to the Buddha in his Bhavana Kuti, his meditation hut, and stand to the right side, and they would light up, because they are shining, they will light up usually either only his kuti or the whole forest, depending upon the radiance. And then they would ask him a question, usually in 4 lines, and usually in a poetic form. Just like this, ensnared. The Deva ask, by what is the world ensnared? By what is it enveloped? By what is the world shut in? On what is the world established? These 4 questions he asks the Buddha. The Buddha then answers, the world is ensnared by craving, tanha, the cause of suffering. Second noble truth. The world is enveloped by old age, aging, sickness and death. The world is shut in by death. The world is established on suffering. So, a considerable amount of Dhamma only in 4 lines. It is not always the Buddha, the Devas, they ask the Buddha because they don't know. Sometimes they also ask because they want to make it known. And this can be one of the situations. Sometimes they don't know, they are in doubt, but also sometimes they want to make something known because they know it will be included in the scriptures and it will be spoken on later, just as I speak it now, 2,500 years after the question was posed. Here's another one. This is from this first book, first chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, where the Devas all are examples of Deva conversations with the Buddha. Ukkanatana Sutta, Crossing Over the Flood, is translated by Thanissaro Bhikkhu, American monk. I've heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anapadika's monastery. There are certain Devata in the far extreme of the night, her extreme radiance, female Devata, lighting up the entirety of Jeta's Grove, went to the Blessed One. On arrival, having bowed down to him, she stood to one side. As she was standing there, she said to him, "Tell me, dear sir, how did you cross the flood?" Then the Buddha answers, "I crossed the flood without pushing forward and without staying in the same place." But how, dear sir, did you cross the flood without pushing forward, without staying in the same place? If I pushed forward, I whirled about. When I stayed in place, I sank. And so I crossed without pushing forward and without staying in the same place. Then the Devata, the female divine being, say, "At long last I see a Brahman, totally unbound, who without pushing forward, without staying in one place, has crossed over the entanglements of this world." This is what the Devas had said, and the teacher approved. Realizing that the teacher has approved of me, she bowed down to him, circumambulated him, went around him, keeping him to her right side, and then vanished right there. And the meaning of the sutta is like this, is to say, if you push, it's like in a river. If you start running in a river, then the stream will take you away because your feet lose contact with the bottom. And if you keep standing in the same place, then it digs down the sand away under your feet, and then you are sucked down slowly. Same thing with this in this world. If you try to progress fast, you become exhausted. Then you give up the path. If you walk the path steadily, steady, keep pushing, steady, never giving up, then you reach the goal. If you stand still, you stagnate, then you sink. Because of loss of probability, exhaustion of good karma keeping up, then there is a gradual decline. So one has to do some significant good to keep the same level, to keep the human level, one has to do significant good. Because one is using up, just like a kind of fuel, what upholds one in the human state, namely good karma, good doing, merit, quantum mechanical probability for being reborn as a human being, being reborn in a female human womb at the moment of transmigration. Here's another one, is a young male Deva, also translated by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Life is swept along, next to nothing its span, For one swept by aging, no shelters exist. Perceiving this danger in death, one should do deeds of merit that bring about bliss. The Buddha then repeats, life is swept along. He agrees in that. Next to nothing is spared. He agrees to that. For one swept to old age, no shelter exists. He agrees to that. Perceiving this danger in death, one should drop the world's bait and look for peace. So he changed only one line. That's a typical interaction between a divine being and the Buddha. They come and say a poem, and this is also what the Buddha do with human beings. And if the Buddha has a twist on it or a correction to it, then he will repeat it and then correct what should be corrected. And here the difference only is that the Devas say one should make merit. But the merit making is also correct, but it will, ultimately speaking, make the being be in samsara. Making merit cannot make you go out of samsara. It cannot end suffering. It can make you divine, yes, as a Deva already were. It can come to a higher divine being, yes, that's true. But it cannot make you end suffering by going to Nibbana. The higher you go, it's more difficult it is, because it's much more, the divine levels are much more captivating, much more pleasant, much more subtle, refined, exquisite. So there the world's bait is much more irresistible. And that's why the Buddha tells this to this young Deva. That drop the bait, drop the whole world, drop all this business of merit making and mind making. Drop it. It is only suffering. So much for human divine interaction. Let's go to the next question. It's question number 124. What is a sign? It's a common technical expression in the text. It's a sign, it's a nimitta in the Pali text. There are several meanings. It's used in the Pali text in several meanings. One is a reflex, a mental reflex or visualized image, usually acquired during meditation. It can is usually a sign of successful practice that has attained some level. There are different levels. If it's the beginning of the concentration, you get the image is called parikamma nimitta. It's preparatory image. If it's in the middle, then it's acquired image, the ukkaha nimitta. And if it's an entirely clear and immovable image arising at a higher degree of concentration, then it's called the counter image, patibakka nimitta. If it's close to jhana, close to absorption, in the neighborhood or access just before absorption, then it's called the upachara nimitta. What can there be examples? What is actually, how does these signs look, or what is it? There's different signs in the different meditation objects. If it's a metta meditation you do on infinite friendliness, then it's usually perceived around the heart region as a kind of, I wouldn't say it's felt as temperature, but still I would say it's felt as a warm wholeheartedness, enveloping the whole mind and heart region with a very seductive and extremely pleasant feeling of well-wishing and good doing, and of a kind of my matured completeness of this well-wishing and good doing and goodwill. And this distinct feeling, though, is not kind of like it sets in, it comes in gradually and then becomes bigger and bigger and more intense. The more successful this metta meditation on universal friendliness is, which can induce the first jhana, the first absorption. As I say, it's enveloping heart and mind simultaneously. And it's a mental sign. is not something you see. It's not something you feel. It's not a temperature. I say it's warm, but this warm and soft, but just to give some taste of what it is like. If you, for example, you're doing meditation on compassion or pitta, karuna, then it can be the terror or shock over seeing how many beings that is blinded and obstructed by ignorance, bound and dragged by desire and lust, and inflamed and burned by hate, and seduced by self-deception. How many beings that under influence of these four mental defilements do things that inevitably leads to their own suffering and to other beings' suffering, now and later and much later. When one first realizes that and sees that to the full extent, then one is overwhelmed by shock and by terror, because it's so tragic. It's a humongous tragedy to see this to the full extent. And then to see this tragedy, even though not in a bad state of mind, just fully realizing it, that's a sign in doing piti, karuna meditation. Doing kayagata sati, contemplation of the body scanning, it can be, for example, that you become absorbed into the internal structure, that will be a visual image of the internal structure of your teeth, or of the internal structure of your bones, or of the internal structure of the brain, or of some kind of organ. And suddenly one is kind of like zoomed in or sucked into this visual image about the microscopic details, internal structures. One might have never seen it before, not even on the pictures, but still one can have these mental images seeing. And one is kind of like absorbed into it. Very fascinating. This is a mental, a visual sign on successful body scanning. Doing Anapanasati breathing meditation, it can be an exceedingly sensitive, almost atomic sensitivity of the breath touch in the nostrils, where one perceives that one can kind of like almost feel each oxygen molecule and nitrogen molecule touch the nostrils and going inside. So it's become granular, this feeling, but in a very pleasant way when one gets absorbed to it. This is a tactile sign. It's not something you hear, it's not something you see, it's not something you think, it's something you touch, you feel tactilely just around the area of the nostrils. This was the signs regarding meditations. Then there are said to be 3 signs just at the moment before death, where one can see one's rebirth destination. There can be three different signs, just like in a dream. Flashes forth just in the moments just before death. The one is one sees the kamma one have done, that is a major kamma one has done, that is determining the rebirth destination, whether up or down. So one sees the action, remembers the giving or the killing, or whatever action it was, that is the most determinant action. Many actions are determining the rebirth, exact rebirth moment, and thereby the destination, wherever it may be. But there will be one of these particular actions in one's past that is the determining action, the most dominant action. And this is one sees. This is called nimitta, kamma nimitta. One sees the sign. One can also see the intention one has with doing this action, whether good or bad. And then one can also see the destination, where one is going, just before death, just before the transmigration happens. So one sees the future destiny, gati nimitta. This is mental object that arise in the very last, penultimate karmic consciousness just before the death moment, the Judy moment. Then there is a lot of nimittas in regarding the sensuous objects when one goes. And it can more be experienced as appearance. visual appearances, smell appearances. It is usually when you are, and this one should guard, when one guards one's senses, then one should guard against these signs also. For example, if you see a sexual object, then usually one will see signs internally of, at the same time as looking at the object, of the genitals. For example, the breasts, or the bum, or the penis, or whatever. At the food, you will see signs of food, but it need not necessarily be the same food as you're looking at, or at the same sexual object you're looking at. It can also be symbolic forms. And it's these symbolic forms, these appearances of similar objects, of similar sense pleasures, that is the signs. Most of the advertisement industry live by inducing very skillfully these signs in people. So they feel a need. When they see the sign, then they are conditioned to feel a need to buy whatever this sign is telling them to buy, whether it's food or clothes or makeup or cars or boats or whatever. This is called a rupa nimitta. A nimitta, a sign of a given kind of form. This one should be very careful about because it's driving one around. A super nimitta will be a pleasant, beautiful object, and an asupa nimitta is a disgusting object. Usually one is running after the pleasant objects and also the pleasant symbolic signs of these sense pleasures inside one's mind. These could be after images. For example, if you see a pornographic movie, or you see somebody drinking a beer, or you see some other kind of movie, action movie, or a romantic movie, then after the movie, you have probably experienced that yourself, there will be after images coming several hours after of whatever perceptions you have. And these after images coming in the mind, which can be identical to what the original perception was, but also some kind of symbolic alterations mixed with other kinds of similar experiences that are reappearing in the mind. And a fantasy is kind of like brewing on them and changing a little bit. And these are the signs, symbolic representations of the desire for this sense craving. The antidote again, that is the asupa nimitta. When a sign of disgusting thing one has memorized during asupa meditation on corpses or on skeletons, then one has a photographic memory of a particular repulsive, disgusting, shocking, disgusting image. And if one is aware, in the moment these signs or symbolic representations of sense desire come in, whether it's a pornographic fantasy or erotic fantasy or a craving for food or craving for entertainment or craving for hearing some music or whatever, then one can use this repulsive image. And because desire and disgust cannot be in this mind at the same time, then the disgust connected with this repulsive image, this asupa nimitta, is push out desire, this craving, immediately. Then one stops having craving. When craving stops, suffering also stops. The urge, the subjective frustration of a felt need to have something that is not present in one's reality goes away instantly. It evaporates instantly with this disgust. So very skillful driving this to have an asupa nimitta in your head. My personal asupa nimitta was a photograph of a boy who has been drowned, and then some crabs or water animals, they had eaten a part of his cheek, and this is swollen up face, blue face, and then there's a part of the cheek eaten away, and then one can see the teeth inside, so there's a hole in the face. And this is so, and also I think because as a child, it's so repulsive, even though I've seen many corpses as a doctor. So just as remembering this sign just once can be for a millisecond, then whatever desire there is in my mind, it goes away, it evaporates instantly. So this object ideas or mental representations or signs or symbolic representations, they can be used both unskillfully and skillfully, advantageous or disadvantageous. It takes, of course, awareness to use them. advantageously. I hope this answers the question number 124 of what is a sign. We go to question number 125, 35 minutes in. Which 5 conditions define the kamma of killing? I actually think there's only 4 circumstances that is enough. A, awareness of that there's a live being. One has to be aware of that there is a live sentient being. If one is not aware of it, then it doesn't count as a killing. B, intention to kill the live being. I want to kill it. It has to be killed because of this and that reason. Killing the live being. Whether you use your hand or foot or weapon, doesn't matter. Poison. Killing the live being. D, satisfaction and no regret in killing it. Then there's a full-blown kamma here, full-blown action, full-blown behavior, and full-blown formation of a karmic return. Intention to kill the live being and killing the live being, knowing it that it is a live being, that's actually enough. But then satisfaction and no regret in killing it afterwards, having perceived that it's now dead, and then being very satisfied with it, that makes the kamma go up, because this is kind of like a second kamma, enforcing or enhancing kamma. So what's the karmic echo of a killing? That is shortened lifetime for the killer in this and in future rebirth, and increased probability for lethal diseases, accidents, and murder. Much suffering, regret, remorse, unhappiness, failure, decay, downfall, and increased probability for rebirth as a hell being, animal, ghost, or demon. So therefore, this first precept is so important. This first sila, this first morality. I hereby undertake the training rule of abstain, avoid any form of killing of any form of sentient being. This is number 1. This human beings and all beings have to learn that. They have to learn that. Otherwise, they will be unable to escape suffering. Because taking other people's life, they love their life just as you and I love our life. This can only lead to suffering. Not only for the other beings, but also for oneself. Because the probability is mirrored back as suffering. Again, awareness of the live being, intention to kill the live being, killing the live being, and satisfaction and no regret in killing it. Then there's a full-blown killing. Full-blown killing. As bad as it comes. As evil as it comes. So much for question 125. Question 126. Did the Buddha ever advise a householder not to go forth? Yes, he actually did. There are several circumstances where it's not suitable to go forth. There can be ages where people are so primitive that it's not suitable to go forth. It's not relevant today. But he also said several other things. A, if one have responsibility as the only child and caretaker for elderly parents, then one should not go forth. Because one's parents need one. If there's nobody else to take care of them, then one should stay with the parents. In gratitude towards them. When they have died, then the one can go forth. B, have children less the age when they can complain about the food not tasting good. For example, that the food is too salty. If children is below that age, the Buddha didn't say specifically what that age was, but if they are below that age where they can complain about the food, then one should stay with the children until they have reached the age where they can complain about the food. And then if there's other ones to take care of them, usually there's another parent or there's grandparents or uncles or so on, and then one can go forth. C, if one is gay, homosexual, bisexual, transvestite, pedophile, necrophile, zoophile or coprophile, that is, have an abnormal or unusual sexual desire. Why is that so? Homosexual and bisexual is easy to see because this is purely practical. It has nothing to do with discrimination. It's a purely practical requirement. if you are going to a monastery as a homosexual, you will see young novices, the age of 15 or 16, they walk without their upper robe. They only have one piece of cloth about them, no underwear, because it's usually very hot. And we're allowed to take out the upper robe when we're inside the monastery where the lay people cannot see. And this means that the gay or bisexual being will be constantly confronted with very attractive sexual objects for him, and same also with the lesbian in a community of nuns. And this is then impossible to make any spiritual progress because you are so overwhelmed by all these sexual objects that are presented to you day and night. And so therefore it's not practical. Once you stay outside the Sangha as a lay person. Gay and homosexual and lesbians and transvestites, they can be very, very good Buddhists, but they cannot ordain because the Buddha said so. And this is purely practical, as I say. It can be compared to, imagine if you take a 20-year young monk and then put him in a girls' school, where the young girls, they go around topless. And they laugh at him and smile at him, fall in love with him, and he fall in love with them. He would not be able to make any spiritual progress. He would be sucked into a world of erotics, and soon he will have sex with one of them, and soon she will become pregnant, and then he will have committed parajika, and then he have defeated himself according to monastic discipline, and then he cannot be a monk anymore for the rest of his life. So that's a purely practical coincidence. Then there's a pedophile, necrophile, and coprophile, and those who have sex. Necrophile, those who have sex with corpses. Coprophile, those who have sex with excrement, and zoophile is those who have sex with animals. And neither of those are actually fit. Their desire is so violent and so gross and so dominating their mind. And because they have access to these sexual objects inside the Sangha also, it's not suitable for them to be ordained. And therefore the Buddha did not allow that. So in these cases, one should not go forth. One should stay a layperson. One could be a very good Buddhist, but one cannot ordain and come into the Sangha as a monastic Buddhist. One can still be a good Buddhist, but not a monastic Buddhist. D, if one is an animal or other non-human being, then one cannot ordain. That was this rule was laid down by a Naga. It's kind of like a big snake being. They can change their form, and this Naga has changed his form to a human being, or look like a human being. And then he was ordained, but there are two circumstances where the Nagas cannot keep their form. That's why they're sleeping or where they're having sex, and they revert to their snake form. And then one monk out in a forest monastery, he waked up, and then there was a snake at this size, this thickness, all over the cabin and sticking out the window and inside the door, a humongous big snake. And he ran away and back to the monastery and said, "That's a snake, that's a big human, my big snake, big snake." And then the Buddha, he called first the Naga and said to me, "Are you a human being?" And then the Naga had to admit that he was not a human being because he could not lie to the Buddha. And then the Buddha told him, "You cannot become a monk. You have to go back to your Naga place, your Naga world. And then you have to keep the Puya days, Upassana days, every new moon and every full moon. And then you will be reborn as a human, and then you can be a monk." And then the Naga left crying from there because he was have been dismissed by the Buddha. He was not allowed to become a monk. Therefore, actually, when you are ordained, then you are asked, "Are you a human being? Are you a human being?" And this is one of the first questions you ask when you ordain. And you ask in Pali. Then you can say, "Yes, I'm a human being." E, if one have done one of the 5 heinous crimes prior to ordaining, prior to going forth, one of the heinous crimes the 5 heinous crimes are killing one's mother, matricide, killing one's father, patricide, killing an arahat, injuring the Tathagata to the extent that there's blood coming out, and successfully creating a schism in the Sangha. If one has performed one of these 5 kammas, then one cannot ordain and should not ordain. Another F is that one has committed a parajika. That is, parajika means you have defeated yourself in this life as a prior life as a monk, or been monk before, then left the Sangha. If you have done any of these in parajikas, that is taken by theft, gone over to another religion while still a bhikkhu, molested or raped a bhikkhuni, then you cannot become a monk again. Even though you have left the Sangha and then you want to reordain, but if you've done one of this, if you raped a bhikkhuni, or you have taken by theft, or you've gone out to another religion and declared as a bhikkhu, declared your faith to another religion or another philosophy, then you cannot become a monk again. Then there are those with obligations. Anyone whose parents have not given their permission, both when going forth, both one father and mother should give permission to it. If one is owing military or government service or jail time, one cannot go forth. If one is a debtor owing money to the government or to banks or to private people, one cannot go forth. One should pay back the money first and then go forth. Otherwise, debtors will flee into this. If one is a slave, not so relevant now, but was relevant at the Buddhist time. If one have a serious disfiguring or communicable disease such as HIV, AIDS, cancer, tuberculosis, leprosy, severe psoriasis or epilepsy, or similar other severe disease that can either be communicated or is difficult to treat, then one should not go forth. I place a link below to Thanisaro Bhikkhu. He made 2 volumes of Buddhist Monastic Code, where the 5 volumes of Buddhist Monastic Code is compressed into 2 volumes. I'll give the link below for those who are interested in ordaining, so they can read up upon the rules about what is actually the requirement before you ordain, what is the requirement, the disciplinary requirement, the monastic vinaya code after you have been ordained, which you come to live under the rest of your life. The last question is question 127. What can be done for meeting the Dhamma in the next life? A. Sincerely wishing, intending, praying and hoping for that noble Dhamma reunion. B. Fulfilling the 5 precepts every day, and the 8 precepts on observance day, every new moon and every full moon. Doing worship vandana to all Buddha statues, senior lay Buddhists, and all ordained monastics. Going down. Daily contemplation of the 3 jewels. And then doing beneficial works, service and contribution to the Sangha of noble disciples, the Ariya Sangha. The contemplation Anupassana of the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dhamma, Sangha, goes like this. This one can recite, I'll give the links below, and do vandana, do as a good rule, do vandana, and do worship, 5-fold prostration with touching with the head, the hands, the knees, and the feet, the floor, every day in front of the Buddha statue. And then recite this text. Worthy, honourable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. Consummated in knowledge and behavior. Totally transcended. Expert in all dimensions. Knower of all worlds. Unsurpassable trainer of those who can't be tamed. Both teacher and guide of gods as well as of humans. Blessed, exalted, awakened, and perfectly self-enlightened was the Buddha. Perfectly formulated is this Buddha Dhamma. Visible right here and now. Immediately effective. Timeless. akaliko. Inviting each and everyone to come and see for themselves. Inspect, examine, and verify. Leading each and everyone through progress towards perfection. Directly observable, experienceable, and realizable by each intelligence. Perfectly training is this noble Sangha community of the Buddha's noble disciples. Training the right way, the true way, the good way, the direct way. Therefore do these 8 kinds of individuals, these 4 noble pairs, deserve both gifts, self-sacrifice, offerings, hospitality, and reverential salutation with joint palms. Since this noble Sangha community of the Buddha's noble disciples is indeed an unsurpassable and forever unsurpassed field of merit in this world, for this world, to honor, support, uphold, respect, and protect. This is doing vandana, worship, towards the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and Sangha. I'll give the links below and in the video also. Then there's a twist on it. What about if you want to see, especially to meet the next Buddha Metteyya and enlighten under him? And he will say like this: you can come as you like, but you pay as you go. This is kind of his motto. The Buddha Metteyya, the friendly one, the unconquerable friend, he will be the last and the 5th Buddha in this kalpa, in this aeon, in this universal cycles. The next one will be no Buddhas. There human beings who will be cannibals and perform incest and pedophilia, almost all of them. So in order to meet this Buddha Metteyya and be enlightened under him, one should, 1, give gifts, dana. 2, one should observe morality, sila. 3, one should practice meditation, bhavana. One should be firm and determined, dalha. One should wish sincerely to meet him with an agitated mind, ubhikkanamasa, agitated mind. 6, one should be stirred by an acute sense of urgency, samvega. One should keep the observance days rigorously, every fortnight. 8, friendliness, metta, should be carefully cultivated. 9, deep concentration, samadhi, should be regularly trained. 10, real, genuine understanding, panya, should be sought and achieved. Can be done by listening to these videos and reading the text and doing meditation. This right behavior, right action, samakamanta, it can be compared to having sound limbs. So one is approaching, walking towards nibbana, because one has good legs, sound limbs. While right understanding can be compared to the ability to see where to go, not to fall astray, go the wrong direction. If both is fully present, then the person will be fully successful. Both understanding and right action, right behavior. Then this person will be successful. Meeting the Buddha Metteyya opens the doors to the deathless Nibbana. I'll give the text on Buddha Metteyya below. There's a whole volume of it on my website. There's a text from old days called Anagatavamsa-desana, which is the Chronicle of the future, and there's also a text of the next 10 future Buddhas. I'll give the links below. 55 minutes And this was the last question 127. Left is only to say again, thank you to the reliable supporters that give every month, to the occasional donors, and to those 3 persons that gave food for this month. If one wants to come with a contribution or go to my website, then there's a small link up here in the left side. There's a small white circle with an eye for information. Just click this, then you will see the links. So thank you very much for the support. May much merit be yours. And thank you for the attention. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma-Sambuddhassa. Worthy indeed, honourable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. Thank you, and have a nice day.
You heard Bhikkhu Samahita from the Cypress Hermitage on the Knuckles Mountain, Pamparella, Central Hill Country, Sri Lanka. Please subscribe to the Google group Buddha Direct and visit the website whatbuddhasaid.net. May all beings become thus happy thereby. Thank you. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma-Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honourable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha.